Welcome to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times, sponsored by MSA Safety. In this series, we bring you sessions from the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show 2025. The NHS Blood and Transplant Service joined the Emergency Services Show on the shop floor to encourage people to find out their blood type and sign up to be a blood donor. On the People and Skills stage, Kate and Ian shared how they tried to create behaviour change through campaigns that seek to get more donors and make blood donation a regular part of their life.
Hi everybody, my name is Kate Thomas and I'm the Assistant Director for Communications at NHS Blood and Transplant.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Ian Williams. I'm the Head of Marketing for Blood and Blood Products at NHS Blood and Transplant.
Wonderful. And I think we're going to play a video to start off.
I'm going to start with the film. So let me just... Something I thought appropriate for our emergency situations today.
Please, there's blood from somewhere.
Hi guys, what have we got?
We've got a 32-year-old female with suspected pelvic fracture.
Okay, we've got low radial pulse, the veins are flat. This is your red. Could we get the bloods ready, please?
Yep. Okay, Laura, we're going to give you some blood now, okay?
Blood's ready.
Running that through now.
When you give blood, you don't know who it will help. You just know you'll be there when it's needed most.
Okay, vitals are improving.
Going to get you to hospital, Laura. You're doing
Excellent.
well.
I'll come back to this, but this is our new advertising, our new video, obviously blood donation, but very much based within the emergency services world. We'll come back to speak more about that.
Absolutely. What I was just going to say was we asked our speakers to come along today to talk very much about the success of some of their campaigns. Across all of the emergency services, there's an element of needing to change human behaviour. And one of the things that these guys have done really well is that very thing. And we wanted to unpick that a little bit today. So that's what this subject, this talk is all about. So again, over to you.
Thank you. But first, not everybody knows about NHS Blood and Transplant. We are part of the NHS, but we have a very specific role. We collect, manufacture and then supply blood to hospitals all across England. And then we also collect and coordinate organ donation and transplantation across the UK. So I'm just going to tell you a couple of the amazing stats of things that we do. So we supply about 2 million blood products to English hospitals every year. We put on 50,000 appointments every week for people to come and donate their blood. We've got 28 fixed blood donor centres in town and city centres, and we've got 250 mobile units collecting blood all over the country every week. We also supply and coordinate 5,000 life-saving organs every year and 9,000 tissue, and by tissue we mean things like heart valves, bits of skin, bones, to save and improve people's lives. And as well as corneas, people's eyes, we can take out people's corneas to transplant and save people's sight. And we also facilitate around 2,000 stem cell donations every year. But we couldn't do this without donors. So people who turn up, give blood, families at the hardest of times consent to giving their loved ones organs. They are absolutely essential to our role. So if anybody in the audience is a donor, thank you very much. If you're not, there'll be a call to action at the end, so don't worry about that. Before we get into blood, if we could just go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to talk you through a couple of other things that NHS Blood and Transplant does. So plasma is 55% of our blood. And that can be turned into making life-saving medicines. But until very recently, we had to throw it away because of the lasting legacy of VCJD. But over the past couple of years, we've got regulators in Europe and the UK to approve the safety of it. And we've been collecting plasma separately and taking plasma out of the blood that we collect. And in March this year, for the first time in a generation, we supplied life-saving UK-sourced plasma medicines to the NHS. And in the first 6 months since we did that, 2,000 patients are now benefiting from that. We're also working with the Ministry of Defence and the air ambulances to develop new products to help people survive major trauma. So, for example, we've developed this product that's freeze-dried plasma, which can be taken to the front line on a battlefield, administered to somebody immediately, and can save their life. So before they can get to a hospital, this thing can save their life, which is really exciting. We're also involved in a cutting-edge genomics program. So sickle cell patients and thalassemia patients are people who have to have regular blood transfusions to save their lives. We are currently doing testing their genomes to make sure that we can properly match their blood. So that's something that our scientists in the laboratories are currently working on. And amazingly, this blew my mind when I joined NHS Blood and Transplant. We make eye drops out of blood as well, and that can save people's sight, which is truly amazing. So just before we get to talking about the marketing campaigns, I wanted to briefly touch on some of the media work that we do. We're always on in terms of the media. We're always working with donors and recipients, people whose lives are saved from blood transfusions, to tell their stories and help them tell their stories in the media. If we can get a really great recipient on BBC Breakfast, for example, we can see in real time people registering to give blood or booking an appointment, which is really amazing. A recent story that we did was a mum who needed 65 units of blood products to save her life in childbirth. And we recently set up an opportunity for her to come in and meet the scientists who've manufactured those products, which turned into a really great national broadcast story. We recently had a blood stocks shortage, and so we needed to put out a major call across the national media for people to come and donate, and 29,000 people registered to donate because of that media call, and 50,000 additional appointments were booked. So doing stuff in the media really does work. And we were really excited last year to work with BBC's Casualty. Their Christmas special was all about blood donation, and there were paramedics wading through the snow with blood to save somebody's life. And we do a lot of work around Black heritage donation as well. We specifically need people of Black heritage to donate blood because their type of blood can be specifically used to treat people with sickle cell disease. So we were really excited to have supermodel Jordan Dunn come in to give blood, and we got a lot of media coverage out of that as well. And then just finally, in terms of partnerships, we work with a lot of organisations and companies to get their support for people who work with them to come and give blood or do internal comms about donating blood. We work with the Ministry of Defence because every armed forces personnel, they all know their blood types. So we particularly need O-negative blood, which is the type of blood that can be used in any situation. So we are sending our blood teams into barracks to get the MOD personnel to come and give blood. We recently worked with Royal Patties, which is a Jamaican brand, and they put a QR code on their packaging to inspire people to come and donate. And then finally, we're currently working with Boots, who are going to be giving out self-testing kits in their shops in Brixton and Birmingham, so people can take away kits, test their blood type, and if they're one of the really important blood types that we need, they will we can identify them and get them to come in and give blood. So that's just a very brief run through of media and partnerships, and I'll now hand over to Ian for the meat of behavioural change.
Thanks very much, Kate. I'm just going to unpack a little bit more about the way we do marketing in NHS BT. And I'm going to introduce, hopefully something that might be familiar to some of you, a sort of planning framework that we use, which the Government Communication Service uses, which is this OASIS framework. Starts with inevitably a mnemonic and an acronym. So objectives, the audience, the strategy, the implementation. The S is scoring, but I'd call it evaluation. And I won't go through this in huge detail, but what we want to make sure is all of our marketing and our comms ladder up to this overarching goal for the organisation. We want to grow and diversify the donor base to meet that clinical demand, reduce inequalities. Everything that we do has to sort of to build to that point. We have a series of business objectives and operational bookings targets. But if I can boil it down to the kind of communications objectives, we want to, in a primary sense, maintain high levels of motivation to give blood in those areas of the country where there's greatest opportunities for the target audiences to give. So we need to marry those two things up, and I'll come on to talk a little bit more about that. And then in a secondary way, the things that Kate has been talking about, we need to increase that consideration of those component products. So plasma, platelets, stem cells, amongst target donors. If I go on to the next bit, I'll talk you a little bit more through the audience. This is kind of a touchstone for marketing. The depth in terms of understanding your audience is key. So if you're involved in this in any way, understanding your audience, where they are, how they think, what channels they consume, all of those things are gold dust for you in building up your strategy. So we have the big proportion of this kind of audience that our marketing focuses on is those 10 million plus audiences who are non-donors, and they're living in our priority areas, and we want to reach them with sort of mass communication means. So really broad age range, 17 to 65, all genders, some kind of archetypes that we're working with which skew a bit younger. And then that's the kind of the large mass media audience. We break it down in terms of those people who are already donors, the whole blood donors from priority groups. Now, priority groups are things like O negative, the universal blood type, RO, the subtype, which helps with sickle cell, and with B negative. So that's a much smaller kind of group, and we can do a lot of those things from our own channels to it. And then the whole blood donors from other groups. We talked about plasma and platelets and stem cell specific sort of blood is required, particularly for those groups. Quite a lot of insight here. I'll just give you some sort of flavors of the way we would want to make sure that we have information that is driving our sort of strategy. We are talking about 12% of that population that are in those target areas, which we can marry up our marketing with our supply. And these tended to be in younger, dense, multicultural cities such as London and Birmingham, areas with a high proportion of RO and Black heritage donors such as Lambeth and Newham and Birmingham, and areas with diverse multicultural communities, and those with a high proportion of O negative donors, so Brighton, Southampton and Leeds. Lots of insight that we build on, things that you would probably be aware of, the health concerns for people, the fear of needles, the kind of age requirements that people might have. Also the motivations for people to give, particularly first-time donors are motivated by that altruism and by that potential sort of warm glow of being able to do something that's giving back and that's community-minded. Very low awareness, as you could might imagine. This touches again on Kate's sort of point about blood type. People often don't know their blood types. We have a stand here if anybody wants to go and get their blood type tested. So that's kind of one of the bedrocks in terms of understanding the target audience. And that's how we start to derive our strategy. And the strategy has to be based on the resources you have, the things that you control, and also that kind of that matching of your resources to your key priorities. In reality, we can only control the things that we can control, and what we look for to create that harmony between our place where our audiences are and the kind of collection capacity is we look for a strong concentration of where our target audience is. So those donor archetypes I talked about, some people of Black heritage, where there's a strong media landscape to pull the levers that we need to pull. We need to have those strong media landscapes. So for example, in London, where a big chunk of our collection capacity is, lots of good media opportunities, lots of great out of home, lots of things that we can work with. Where there's a good choice and stability in our kind of blood collection program, where there's room for growth in our donor base, we need to be able to work with our statistics to see, is there headroom to grow? Are there those donors there? And whether our donor experience is actually sort of changing. So on Monday, we are opening a new donor centre in Brighton. We'll have activity that goes around there. We've had a previous one open in Brixton. So that program we will support where there's a change. And that gives us kind of proportion of what we do. This is how we would split this. So 50% of our budget goes to London in a paid, owned and earned and shared activity. 30% of West Midlands and Greater Manchester. We talked about Leeds, Nottingham, and then the areas that we are where our donor centres are in Reading, Southampton, Eastleigh, and Brighton and Hove. These other areas, Bristol, Sheffield, London, Derby and Leicester, are supported by our own channels, our shared channels. So that's how we proportion it. We based it on the evidence, and we use it from the one from our donor program, but also from our econometrics, our ad tracking, and we make our decisions on that. I mean, famously, I think strategy is often about what you don't do, so you've got to make those kind of choices.
This episode of the Emergency Services Times podcast is sponsored by MSA Safety, proudly supporting emergency services and first responders on the front line. At MSA Safety, protecting first responders isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We work closely with fire and rescue services across the UK to develop and deliver safety solutions designed to meet your ever-evolving needs. That includes MSA Bristol Firefighter PPE, trusted by services across the UK and beyond, shaped through years of collaboration with frontline teams. It also includes our growing investment in innovation and technology, from the connected M1 SCBA modular solution to our agile, fully managed service model that helps keep crews protected and ready to respond. But for us, safety goes beyond equipment. We believe in standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others, whether it's supporting firefighter charities, backing mental health initiatives, or showing up for community events. MSA is proud to be part of the Emergency Services family. To learn more about our work in the UK and how we're supporting first responders every step of the way, visit www.msasafety.com. With MSA Safety, when you go in, we go in with you.
Briefly touch on this. This is if anybody has come across this in terms of as the Billiton Field research, which is about how you apportion your spend. And broadly, we wanted to apportion 60% to the kind of the brand building, emotional connection part of it, and that will be in our inspire and educate sort of phases. So that ad I showed you at the beginning, that's very much trying to inspire donors in it. The navigate part of it is where you really are navigating people to make a booking. Strongly evidence-based in a way that proportions are more weighted to the brand communications. You can sort of see that happening in the commercial world. Ideally, you would do a 60-40 split, and that's what we're trying to aim for. You can build those longer, deeper emotional connections with the brand building than you can by just keep hammering a kind of book now message. And the same in the kind of commercial world for the sales message. Obviously, you can see if you look at the brand advertising of someone like Nike, they will very rarely be pushing you a pair of trainers. They will be selling you something that's much more of a lifestyle and an emotional connection. I'll move on from there because that's quite detailed. This is where it gets to the fun bit, but you need to have done kind of the underpinning, I guess. So this is our platform giving types. So our creative platform, it applies our behavioural science sort of principles to people who self-identify as being a giving type, who are altruistic and want to give back. What we notice from our ad tracking versus our reality is there's a big intention gap. So our last ad tracking had the intention to donate at 33%. We know that being generous, actually only less than 5% of people will actually donate. If you're on more stronger measures, you could probably whittle that down to more closer to 2%. So that 2% of the population who are supporting all of the blood donation and all of the needs in the country. So we want to model that, and those people who are minded to give, we know it's potentially a third of people, and to get them to self-identify as the kind of person who wants to donate blood. So we established a giving type 2 years ago with a great nation of givers, which is the Michael Dapper sort of video here, comedian here, much more kind of a fairly sort of light-hearted sort of appeal, and very much targeted on London. What I showed you here at the beginning was our new Be There activity. So that kind of the idea that as a blood donor, you can be there in those life-saving moments. You can be the person that saves a life at the side of the road, even when you've got your feet up and you're miles away. That kind of powerful kind of connection that you can make that difference, but also it's easy. I think they're one of our two sort of key messages around it, the incredible impact that you make, but also the ease of it. So our most regular and most tested line will be save up to 3 lives in 1 hour, which combines the two of those things. Also going to touch on Love Is in the Blood, which is new for us. It's effectively dating and donating sort of content. So this is really trying to get to our younger audiences. We know our younger audiences are less likely to see themselves as blood donors, don't necessarily see it modeled to them. Particularly, we want to be in environments and content where a kind of an 18 to 34 audience, probably younger at the younger end of that, will be. And in those channels. So we have a media partnership with Channel 4.0. So basically, they're kind of the younger arm of Channel 4, who are kind of the dating content kings. And we created a blind dating with the blood donation piece of content for that. And using those behavioural elements that we talked about in terms of relatable messages. So in this case, it's their peers, so actually showing, not telling, sort of showing the kind of the blood donation by their peers and showing it's possible, even aspirational. And also by Adiola Patron is kind of the host for this. She's kind of a YouTuber and a regular host on 4.0. So those things that build that kind of credibility and kind of want to normalize with this audience. I'm going to see if I can play some of this now. I don't think I'll have. This is the full 12, 13-minute episode. I will send links I can, or you can search it. It's good content. But I've got a promo, I think, here. So let's just try and get to the next one. Right, so this is Adiola Patron. Let's see if we can hear.
Welcome to Love Is in the Blood, where sparks fly and blood flows. Literally,
The blood is flowing.
yes.
The blood is flowing indeed.
2 strangers, 1 day, both donating at Brixton NHS Blood Donation Centre. We're at the heart of something a little bit different today.
So is this your first time giving blood?
Yes, it is.
2 strangers that I've selected are going to go on a blind date. They'll get to know each other.
What's something your ex would say about you? The laugh. How do you act when you're catching real feelings? I mean, like now, ma.
There's a divider between them, so they'll get to chat, connect, and see if there's real chemistry, romantic gestures, or consistent effort.
Consistent
effort. Oh gosh, I hear wedding bells. But no peeking. It's decision time. If you would like to meet your dater face to face, 3, 2, 1.
So if you want to find out what happened, you'll have to watch the long form next sort of 12 minutes. It's entertaining stuff, so I would recommend it. And please do share it. It's what we want to be. It's actually sitting on 4.0's kind of channel, so people are just consuming it as regular content rather than any kind of piece of blood marketing. Let's move on. We also work a lot with radio. It's one of our hardest working channels, effectively. So linear radio and digital audio. And actually, when we do econometrics, that kind of like looking back on what was effective, radio comes out pretty much top of the tree as to how effective it is. We have moving into still in Inspire, so still in that Inspire part of it, but we want to do a bit more education here. So each of these different examples carries on the be there approach, the idea of that your donor can be making that incredible sort of difference even while they're getting on with their lives. And we use the actual recipient. So we have the recipient kind of voices on here, and we split it up between the component parts that we talked about. So we can do a bit more educational unpacking. So platelets, plasma, sickle cell, childbirth. I'll see if I can play one of them.
Having cancer is really hard. The chemo makes me feel super tired. I need platelet transfusions a lot.
So I'm going to go back a bit because you missed the first part of it.
Matt is enjoying a rare day off, feet up, footy on. But the platelets from his last blood donation are definitely not having a day off.
Having cancer is really hard. The chemo makes me feel super tired. I need platelet transfusions a lot. They help me feel a bit better so I can hang out with my friends. Matt doesn't know me, but thanks to giving types like him, I can keep going.
By giving blood, you can be there for someone without being there. Save up to 3 lives in 1 hour. Book now at blood.co.uk.
And that goes on with plasma, sickle cell, and the emergencies for childbirth one. So and this is how it maps out for our paid media. So we are in, as I say, we are targeted, but we are in those 8 different areas that I talked about. But in the audio visual that we showed, we're in video on demand and YouTube and online video. We have lines on linear radio, so Smooth, Capital Heart, and all of the ones you would expect. Digital audio, Spotify and Acast. A new one, we've moved into a bit more kind of ads in mobile gaming, massive audiences in mobile gaming. Community VOD as well, so video on demand that really targets our Black Heritage audience, which is great sort of layering to make sure that we are really sort of over-indexing there. Obviously, lots on social. We do tend to do an awful lot of social lectures in that navigate phase. It's actually getting people over the line to make their booking. Out of home, we do out of home mostly when there are donor centres opening, but we're also excited about doing some London bus wraps in November. Typically, it's a time when stocks are under pressure, and we have a good collection capacity in London, so we can connect the two things together. And actually, as much as there is a fantastic media landscape in London, it's actually really hard to cut through. So we want something unmissable. Digital display, which is kind of some of the display ads that will they mostly are around the Brighton opening, but we're looking at City Mapper as well, which should just be around London, again in that navigate kind of space where people are actually just are close to the donation point. I mentioned kind of Love Is in the Blood and the 4.0 partnership. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. This is the end of the cycle. So basically this is S scoring. This is our evaluation part of it. So this is a, I won't go into the full detail, but I do recommend, if you want to have a look at this is the approach that's on the Government Communication Services website in it. It's a very structured way of setting up your evaluation, and it makes sure you've got that kind of feedback loop, the learning and development that you should be always feeding back from your communications to run for the next time. So you look at all the inputs, the kind of total spend, the kind of the asset consecration, all the things you need to input at the beginning, the kind of output parts of it, some of the reach and frequency of paid media. Outtakes is the first things where you first start getting some knowledge about how your advertising is being received. So attitudes, knowledge, claimed behaviour. Outcomes, registrations and sign-ups, very key one for us, and appointment donations and bookings. So we're really driving for appointment bookings is our main KPI. And then the really big stuff, which might take some time to build up to, how are you impacting the size and diversity of the donor base? How you collecting it, how you impacting the very specific blood groups we want, like O negative and RO, and donor satisfaction. How are we driving that up? That is kind of the end of our show. But I just wanted to plug a little bit to say anything you've seen that you could share and amplify on that. Any case studies anybody has, we're always keen for the case studies to illustrate the needs of blood and blood donation, and anything that actually will help us kind of navigate people to a donation. Always very, very welcome. And as we mentioned earlier, we are here in terms of blood typing.
Over there. Sort of that direction.
Do you know the stand number?
Oh, I don't know the stand number.
Well,
it's got to give blood all over it. So if you don't know your blood type, head over there.
Very good.
We'll tell you.
Very good. If I may, I just want to make an observation and a question. Amazing presentation. Thank you very much. Really insightful. What I know from being here for many years and talking to many emergency services, communications, PR especially, is one of the toughest things to crack. And often I know that emergency services are very small, appear to have very small comms teams, limited budgets. That looked like a very sensible but sophisticated approach. You know, how easy is it for an organisation with quite a small capability to achieve something like that in terms of the planning of, you know?
I think the frameworks still apply.
Right.
And you know, whether you're just, let's say you take paid media out of it entirely, all the frameworks still apply. So you will have organisation objectives. That will be the top of your tree. Anything you do should be aligning to that. They should ladder up to it. If they're not, you should seriously question why you're doing it. You should really, everybody should be able to do audience research to a degree. You might not have formal research, but there'll be desk research that you can do on it. You should know quite a bit about your audience.
Yeah.
The strategy should be partly aligned to where you are in the strategy. And the implementation parts of it, you use what's available to you. There's obviously an awful lot that can be done in your owned and your earned channels, your websites, your emails. You can get extraordinary kind of cut through with proactive media by engaging press and others. Okay, would you add to that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all the work that I sort of look after, the media and the PR team and the partnerships team, all of that is free, if you like. It's just the resource of the people doing it. We don't pay for any of the media coverage that we get. It's all through our relationships with the media. So if you're a small organisation with not much budget, the key thing is finding those amazing stories that really resonate with the media and your audience.
But also developing relationships with those people, almost when you don't need them, but so that they're there when you do.
Yes,
I guess.
Exactly.
Right,
exactly.
okay, yeah.
And I should say, I don't think our job is harder than people on the front line.
Fair enough. So I've asked a question. I know we have a small and select audience, but are there any questions from the floor at all? Would anyone like to ask anything?
Yeah, sorry. So I really enjoyed that about the strategy, and I haven't dealt with that stuff. I'm in a volunteer organisation. I haven't dealt with that stuff for years, so it was a really good mini primer for me. But did you really say that only 2% of people that are eligible to donate actually do?
No, 2% of people donate. 2% of the public donate. So not everybody's eligible. So if you might, your veins not be all right, you might have had some illness, but 2% of the public donate.
Right. Yeah.
Which is
that's quite an interesting, quite a striking stat in its own right, isn't it?
That's probably the narrowest definition of it, because that's what we would call our active donor base. So it's probably wider than that. But I say even charitably, I would say it's less than 5% on that. So we take a kind of 12-month window on it. So that conceivably people who are still donating outside of that. Yeah. But it's still pretty shocking, I think.
Yeah. But it's quite, you're asking people to give up time to go to a donor centre to, takes about an hour overall, but it's, it's an incredibly rewarding thing to do. And we are trying to make it as easy as possible for people to do that, because we know it's...
Yeah. There's a whole raft of things, from personal fear of needles and all sorts of things, isn't there? Really I know,
I don't like needles.
No, absolutely. Excellent. Thank you for your question. Can I just ask you to thank our speakers? Thank you very much. It was really informative.
Thanks for listening. Remember that by taking time to learn from our speakers, you can earn CPD points from our partner CPDme. So do check out the link in the show notes. Our thanks to MSA Safety for their continued support for our podcast, and to Smart Digital for producing this series. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times.